Hey guys, it is Esti and Justin from Not For Long Media.
If you like the video you're about to watch, be sure to like the video itself and subscribe to our channel. We really appreciate it.
Enjoy the video and also don't forget to follow us on our socials at Not For Long Media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
What is up, everybody? This is your host, Colin Thompson with Not For Long Media. Justin Ayers is joining me for some Thompy Time tonight as well. Friend of the podcast, longtime friend of mine, Tom Moore. Tom, how you doing today?
Great. Nice to be able to catch up a little bit with you, Colin.
Yeah, catching up a little bit. Nice enough to join us with your off time here before the big run for you. You've been covering the Sixers for how long now?
It's my 34th season.
34 seasons covering the Sixers.
Yep.
First season, any particular players on the team that are big names in NBA history?
Well, my first season was 88-89, and it was Mo Cheeks' last year with the Sixers. And my first 4 years were Barkley's last 4 years. So I got 4 years of Barkley, which was what a trip, I'll tell you. Holy smokes.
A Barkley story that you like to share frequently that you could share us here on?
Sure. Yeah, one that's more presentable, shall we say. Well, he had a couple of, they acquired a guy named Charles Shackelford, who was like a rebounder out of NC State. And he was kind of lamenting that said, I was telling ownership to get Shaq and they got the wrong one. Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah, I would have changed some things.
Yes. And they had another one where they had a guy named Derek Strong, who was a power forward. And Barkley said he looked like Samson, but he played like Delilah. And it just day after day, and there are other ones that probably aren't as presentable, shall we say, but just really good stuff. It was never a dull moment those 4 years.
You got to love that early in your journalist career. You have Charles Barkley, and then you were there for all the Allen Iverson days. But really, what we want to talk about today is what's going on in Philadelphia right now. I'm going to send it over to Justin here in a minute, but essentially Ben Simmons shows up. The Sixers last year go all the way to the Eastern Finals, I believe. Sorry, excuse me if that's bad on my end.
It was the second. They lost in Game 7 of the second round. They had the best record in the East. They had home court, but they lost to the Hawks in 7 games in the second round.
There you go. So also the Hawks, right? They should have beat the Hawks, right? Yes. Things were going well. The mess that happened with how Ben Simmons was playing. Obviously, during the regular season, Ben was rolling. The team had a lot of camaraderie. It seemed like a lot of things were moving in the right direction. Like you said, top seed in the East, and they found the right coach and the right formula, and they have enough shooters, and Joel's healthy, and all these great things are going down. And then the playoffs happened. It became hack a Shaq, hack a Simmons, and he was really poor from the foul line. What is the latest in Sixers land here, and what's going on in Philadelphia with Ben Simmons now coming back to the team after saying he was not going to be joining the team?
He's in Philadelphia, but it's still unclear if he's going to join the team and play. He got a COVID test on Monday, so I think Friday he can't do anything with the group until Friday. I guess it's 4 days till you clear. But apparently he met with Morey and he met with Doc Rivers, but it's still unclear if he's planning on playing. I think what happened was, the way his contract is set up, he got an $8.25 million payment in the summer, and he was due a second $8.25 million payment October 1st. But what the Sixers did is they checked with the NBA, and the NBA said, you can take that money, you can put it into like an escrow account, and then you can remove the fines right from there. So that's what they did. So he's already lost $1 million out of the $8.25 million, the second payment. And I think he realized, and his agent checked with the NBA, he's not getting that money back. You don't recoup that money. That money's gone. So I think he realized, I got to report at least now. I assume he doesn't get paid for Monday night. He flew in, and apparently no one knew. And supposedly he texted the Elton Brand got a text from security that Ben Simmons is outside, wants to come in at the game on Monday, the preseason game Monday night. Crazy. So I don't really know what's going to happen, because if he's not hurt and he doesn't play, he's going to lose the money. Maybe he thinks that this will speed up the chances of a trade. I don't really know, but it's probably the second most surreal thing I've covered in my years with the Sixers. The first one was probably the whole Brian Colangelo wife burner scandal. That's something that you could never in a million. I checked after that, and every one of those accounts followed me, and I interacted with some of them and had no idea. I had no idea, who these people were. They were different players on the team and so on, but I didn't know, like who it was. It was a name and it was a bunch of digits, and there was like 6 of them. And I looked at every single one followed me.
Wow. So do you remember any of those conversations you had with those fake burner accounts in particular?
Unfortunately, I don't have the phone that I had, the previous phone that had the stuff on it, but it was somebody, they said something I think it was Embiid, and I don't remember. And I don't remember, I think I took a neutral position, and they were more negative about, whether he was spoiled. I don't remember exactly, but obviously somebody wasn't happy with the way Embiid was treating Colangelo, whether it was his wife or whoever, I don't know. But that was, because I'm looking, I'm like, all right, that one follows me, that one follows me, that one follows me, that one, every single one followed me.
That's crazy. So Tom, Ben Simmons is obviously the talk of the NBA right now. I mean, so much of his situation is just unknown. Like I was looking at what Doc Rivers was saying this week, and he was asked about, like, is the Ben Simmons trade request still active? He said he didn't know. And then, after they lost to the Hawks and Ben Simmons famously missed that dunk, somebody asked him, could he be a point guard for a championship team? Doc said, I don't know. Why do you think that so much of Ben Simmons' future in Philadelphia is up in the air?
Well, I mean, he told them they lost Game 7 on June 20th at the Wells Fargo Center to the Hawks. And then the Chicago pre-draft camp was the 21st to the 27th. And during that camp was when Rich Paul told the Sixers for the first time, Ben wants to be traded. Now it didn't become public knowledge until the end of August, when Keith Pompey from the Inquirer, who's a good friend of mine and a really hard worker and not as good a guy as you could be, who went to Pitt. You know what I mean?
Shout out to Mike Carey.
Yeah, really, that's true. All right. Yeah, that's true. Mike. Yeah. Mike and Louis Riddick, et cetera. But yeah, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. Oh yeah. So they had a 2-month window to try to trade him, but apparently Morey was asking for too much. Keith broke the story at the end of August that they had asked, to be traded. And at that point, you're hoping to get 50 cents on the dollar, and Morey wasn't getting what he hoped he could get. Maybe he was asking too much. I would love to know what the best offer was before that thing happened, before it became public knowledge at the end of August. So if you're not going to make a trade for, that you don't think is going to make your team better or keep your team the same, you hold on to him, which is what the Sixers are doing. And I guess they kind of called his bluff. And when he realized he was going to lose this money, they never criticized him. Brett Brown never did. Brett Brown coached his dad, Dave Simmons, in Australia. But Doc Rivers, I thought, would come in and would, be tough. And maybe Sam Cassell, the assistant coach, was, but Doc would not say a single word criticizing him until Game 5 of the Atlanta series. And then, as you said, Justin, Game 7, I think he was just so stunned they lost when David Murphy from the Inquirer Daily News said, do you think you can win with him going forward? And he said, I don't know about that. Now, he's denied saying that, which is funny. Like Scott Van Pelt ran his quote for me on SportsCenter. Like he answered it. He said he avoided the question and he wouldn't get into it. And he said it was the first question. It was the 5th question. And he said exactly what Justin and I said. So I don't know if he's trying to change, be a Larry Brown revisionist historian or what, but Ben Simmons and Rich Paul know what he says. He said, everybody knows what he said. So it's a big giant mess. And, people here are thinking, all right, he's back, he's going to play. I think it's less than 50-50 that he plays a game for the Sixers again. I think it's more likely that he's here, he can get his money, and it increases the chances that he's traded, which is what he wants anyway.
You're right. The holdout situation was what I found so fascinating about this, because normally when guys hold out, it's usually a star player on a bad team that wants to get traded. But then Ben Simmons is not the best player on the Sixers. And I thought did you think it was a little presumptuous of Ben Simmons to assume that, okay, well, if I hold out and do this whole ordeal and get Rich Paul involved, that, I can just go anywhere I want.
Well, yes, definitely, Justin. But the other thing is he's 1 year into a 5-year, $190 million contract. So he's got 4 years and over $150 million left. And I mean, I don't know this for sure, but I would not be surprised if Adam Silver and the NBA had gotten involved here, because that's a bad look when a guy that has that long and that much money and is a star player and he's holding out, for what reason? That's a bad example. The other guys in the same situation. It's one thing if you're in the last year of a contract, they're not going to extend you. They won't trade you. You can kind of make a case in a situation like that. But yeah, and they were putting stuff out like he doesn't want to play on a team where it's built around Joel Embiid. And I thought Embiid came out a couple weeks ago and said, look, this team is not built around me. It's built around Ben. All we have are shooters. He said, we got rid of Jimmy Butler, which I think was a mistake, which is a direct quote, because Ben had to have the ball in his hands. And when Jimmy Butler was on the court at the end of the game, Jimmy Butler had the ball in his hands, and it was all Jimmy Butler and Embiid. And Simmons stood in the corner, and they basically played 4 and 5 in the half court offense. So, and he's right. They did a lot of things to try to appease him. Their whole look at Seth Curry, Danny Green, these shooters. That's because of Ben Simmons. I mean, it helps Joel Embiid too. Don't get me wrong, but you have to surround him with shooters. You can play him last year with like Dwight Howard because neither guy will shoot. You can't play 3 on 5 in the NBA. So if he's traded and they have more of a normal lineup, they can mix and match better. Obviously, defensively is the area where they'll miss the most because he guarded the other team's best 1 through 4, and was the runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year. But yeah, it's really kind of amazing. I mean, I just think he's surrounded by yes men, and no one ever criticizes him. And the fact that, and then Embiid, if you remember after Game 7, said what was the turning point? Said the turning point is when we passed up the dunk, and Thibault was fouled and made 1 of 2 free throws. There was Sixers were down 2 with 3.5 minutes to go. Thibault made 1. Simmons had a dunk with Trae Young, who's 6'1", 9 inches shorter, stepping toward him. He just literally had to drop the ball through the basket, and he passed it out. So I don't think Simmons is used to being criticized publicly, and he was by the coach and the best player on the team. And I think that was enough where he said, rather than say, I can't shoot 33% from the line in the series, and I can't. He did not take a shot in games 4, 5, 6, and 7 in the fourth quarter. Did not take a shot. Forget making a shot. He didn't take a shot. That can't happen. That's impossible.
So I was looking, and I think I saw Charles Barkley, because, we bring it up Charles Barkley again. Did he also request a trade from the Sixers in the late 80s, early 90s? And
he did.
How was
after the 90-91 season, he says he offered to give money back to sign better players to have a better chance to win the championship, and ownership wouldn't do it. So he was 28 years old, and he thought, I'm in the prime of my career. We're not going to win here. So he said things and did things, kind of on the QT, but he let all the beat writers know that he wanted out, and he forced his way out in June of 92. And then was the MVP of the NBA in 92, 93, and took the Suns to the finals. They lost in 6 games to Jordan and the Bulls. So he did do that, but it was different circumstances. And I mean, he produced on the court. It was not like he was not a guy who had a major hole in his game and didn't address it. Let's put it that way.
That major hole in the game we're talking about, obviously, is a jump shot, foul shooting, jump shot, confidence with the ball in his hand. Obviously, extremely talented player. Stephen A. Smith quoted, he's a jump shot away from being LeBron James, right? He's got unbelievable gifts, and that jump shot would create for him and his teammates. Where is the block on the jumper? What have you heard around the building? Because I watched him in college. I knew the Sixers were tanking. He was the top player. We were dialed in. My wife's father went to LSU. He talks about when Ben Simmons shot the ball at LSU. Yeah. I remember him pulling up from 3 vividly, like, hey, that's a nice shot. He's not a knockdown shooter, but he shoots the ball. That's okay. He's going to work on his jumper and he'll get better. It seems like a natural trend for players, especially as the game has changed over the years and it's gone beyond the arc and over, above the rim. But where's the block? What have you heard around the building? I think he doesn't want to be embarrassed. And I think if he misses, he's embarrassed. He will shoot them at practice. He'll shoot them pregame. He'll shoot them anytime, but in an actual game. And I think, and it's really weird. Like when we would go to practice, we would rarely see him shoot. He would like go behind the basket and try to shoot shots over the backboard, like, goofy shots. Like it was just a very strange thing. But like, it doesn't matter if we see it, but if you don't do it in a game, there are going to be millions of people that see it across the country and in the Delaware Valley and so on. And I think the whole reason for that fourth quarter being so passive is he doesn't want to get fouled. He's embarrassed when he goes to the line. You see him when he's at the line, he doesn't shoot the ball the same way twice.
his feet are moving. He's just so uncomfortable. But the answer to that is go in the gym and shoot 500 free throws a day for 4 months. And just by repetition, he actually was up to like 67% in the regular season last year, which isn't great, but was better than he had done. And then in the playoffs, I mean, he made 33% of his free throws in that series against the Hawks. If he makes 50%, they win that series easily. Like that's hard to believe. There are Shaq was a bad free throw shooter, but he never made 33%. That was I think he ended up at 35% in the 2 playoff series, which was the worst in NBA history from a guy I think who attempted 70 free throws or more in the playoffs. Like the worst, and everyone goes gaga over him with 3-pointers. I don't care about 3-pointers, but he can have an open 10-footer whenever he wants it. He won't take it. I mean, a 10-footer in the NBA, that's a high percentage shot, and he won't take it. And you were talking, Colin, about threes. When Joel Embiid was at Kansas, he took 3 threes his 1 year at Kansas. The 2 years he was out with foot surgery, he just shot and shot and shot. And I think he probably still takes too many threes, but he shot like 37% on threes last year, and he has good form. It looks like it's going in. He just did it by repetition and shooting thousands and thousands of them. And there's no reason to think Simmons can't do it, but apparently he won't do it. You always see, it's always going to the basket, and he doesn't have a problem doing that, attacking the rim with his size and the way he goes downhill. But for him to take the next step, he needs to have a shot. You look at the shot charts and everything's 5 feet and in. And he's got the ability to take and make 10 to 15 foot shots, forget 3-pointers, but he won't take them. And in the playoffs, teams know they just back off him. They double team Embiid, and he is passive. He crosses midcourt, gives the ball up, and stands off to the side.
So before we transition into the rest of the team, talk about Joel and what's moving forward with the Sixers and discuss what to expect from them this year without Ben, whatever that may be. What's the best move for Ben? What would they like in return? Obviously, you want a superstar in return and all that stuff, and maybe a draft pick or whatever that may be. I don't know. But what is the best fit? If you had to pick a player or two that's reasonable, right? You're not trading for LeBron James, but maybe a CJ McCollum. Like, what are some names out there
to get in return? Yeah. McCollum would be, maybe like McCollum and Covington, something like that, because they can use help with the perimeter defense. The Pacers, and I wouldn't do it now, but it might be something, whether you maybe Brogdon and LeVert, who's a guy who can create off the dribble, who's a wing, who gave them trouble when he was with the Brooklyn Nets. That's 2 reasonable guys, and maybe a draft pick. To me, that's not an unreasonable trade. Those are the kinds of moves. I don't think it's going to happen with Lillard. I think that's a pipe dream unless Lillard decides, I'm not going to win here, I want out. And even then, you're going to have to trade more than Simmons. You're going to have to trade probably Maxey and, at least 1 first-round pick, maybe multiple ones, and possibly pick swaps. I mean, it's going to be a very costly deal. But, I mean, Lillard and Embiid would be a heck of a, pick and roll game, 2-man stuff, that they could really, really be a weapon. Kind of like Butler, but even better, that type of thing.
Yeah, CJ McCollum was the one that immediately came to mind. Every time I look, it's always Portland Trailblazers interested in a possible Simmons deal. But speaking about the whole team, like, how much of a distraction do you think this whole Simmons thing is? Are these guys getting like bombarded with questions about what's Ben up to? Like, do you think that's this is becoming an issue right now with the Sixers team, the Ben Simmons situation?
To some degree. I mean, today at practice, it was all, does he have to apologize? People don't know what to say. They're like, well, if he wants to apologize, he should apologize. If he doesn't think he should apologize, he doesn't have to apologize. But no one knows, like I said, if he's going to be back or, what's exactly going to happen. But it's a distraction, and it's only, the longer it goes on, it's probably going to be off and on, but it's going to continue to be there until the situation is resolved. I mean, if he's still here Monday, and he's not playing, and they don't know if he's going to play in the opener Wednesday in New Orleans, and everything's up in the air, like, I don't know. Like, it could go on, for weeks at a time. Maybe they'll do something when Morey was in Houston. Tracy McGrady was coming back from microfracture surgery and wanted to play more. And they decided that they didn't think he was ready. So he negotiated with the agent and told McGrady, you go, you don't have to be with the team. And 2 months later, he worked out a trade. So it wasn't a constant thing. But also McGrady was at the end of his career. He never averaged double figures again. He was 30. He was not the same player. Simmons should be in his prime, 3-time All-Star, 25 years old. So yeah, it's going to continue to be. I don't know how it couldn't be, because no one really knows what's going on. No one really say what's going on. Maybe Rivers doesn't know what's going on. They may not know what Simmons plans to do. I had somebody in the NBA give me information and, told me some things, but then I asked, do the Sixers expect him to play? And the guy didn't get back to me. So I honestly think they don't know. They really don't know what he's going to do. They're waiting either from Rich Paul or Simmons to find out what his end game is here, getting traded, but are you willing to play here in the interim? And it's unclear if that's the case.
It seems like what it's going to turn out to be is, God forbid, injuries, right? But they happen, and it's a huge percent injury rate in the NBA. It's not the NFL where there's 100% injury rate, but there's a massive percent of players that are injured, that a contending team that's gone all in would want to maybe scoop him up. I don't know. It's food for thought. And maybe they're going to be playing LeBron in the Western Conference and go scoop him up to guard LeBron or guard some of the, power forwards in that league like Kawhi. I don't know. Just something that popped into my head.
No, that could be. It could be. And also the fact that, he would need to be on a team that has multiple viable scorers. So he can be the third or fourth option, which is really what he's offensively, better at. But you're right. And teams are interested because they think they can get a really good deal. They think they can get a distressed asset, if you will, and they don't have to pay full value, full freight. So, we shall see.
We shall see. It's going to be interesting to see who can get, with Ben, work with Ben. Obviously, there's a mental block there, and what's going on. And if somebody can get not a hold of him, because I hate that term. He's obviously a grown man and understands what's going on, but can't get over that mental hurdle. It's definitely a mental hurdle. There's no two ways about it. You talk about it, everyone describes it. So hopefully it's with the Sixers. I'm a Sixers fan, and it would be great to see it work out there. But if not, maybe somebody will get a hold of another team and we'll see what happens. So what do you expect for the Sixers this year? Ben's not in the building.
Yeah.
Their team, I think Morey said last year, I heard him say, and I've said on this podcast before, that people would die for the issues that the Sixers have. They're one of the top 3-4 teams in the Eastern Conference, with or without Ben. Is that the truth?
Possibly. Yeah. It's just hard to tell. It sounds like with no Simmons, either Shake Milton or Maxey will start. And then the other one will be like the first guard off the bench. Each one started a preseason game and they both were hurt for the game the other night. So they didn't play. They still have a very good team, but I think the Bucks are better. And I think the Nets are better with or without Kyrie, just because Harden and Durant are just such a 1-2 offensive punch. Durant is just unstoppable. And, Harden, their issues are at the defensive end. And that's where you miss, Simmons the most against a team like that, because he could guard Durant and he's about the same size and he has about the same wingspan, or he could switch on to Harden or whatever. He was so versatile at the defensive end. I mean, I think they're a good team. I think they're an upper, top 4 team in the East. But yeah, I mean, it's just such an unknown. Offensively, they should be a better half-court team in terms of 5 viable scorers, but can they score more and be more effective offensively to make up for what they're going to be lacking at the defensive end? I mean, you look at the Nets. If they start Harden, who guards Harden? Danny Green, he certainly couldn't guard Trae Young. He's older now. Who guards Durant? Tobias Harris? I don't know. I mean, Simmons at least could take one of those guys and do a good job. So, and the Bucks, I think, are still very good. I think that's a formidable team, whether they won the title last year or not. Now, the Sixers should be in the mix then, with or without Simmons. Eventually, they'll get something and probably get a ball handler in return and maybe a wing or whatever. And that'll help them. But it's just so hard to say because what they have. And Tobias Harris really came up small in the last 4 fourth quarters against the Hawks too. He really did. If Simmons wasn't so bad, I think Harris would have gotten, additional grief because he was almost invisible. He didn't score in 2 of the fourth quarters. I think he ended up shooting like 4 for 18 in the 4 fourth quarters. And it just really did not get it done when they really needed it. Seth Curry and Embiid were their guys. And after that, they really struggled to have anybody who could score in the fourth quarter.
I love it. So you brought up Maxey and Thibault. Who are some of the young guys? Are those going to be the young guys that kind of, leads the Sixers second unit? Like, who are some of these guys that they should be looking forward to taking a step up this year?
Well, they really like Isaiah Joe, but right now he's probably like the 11th man. If Korkmaz is going to play, George's Niang that they signed from the Jazz is a really good 3-point shooter. He's an upgrade at the stretch four off the bench from Mike Scott. And Andre Drummond is a better scorer than Dwight Howard. Similar rebounders, defenders, but like on the nights Embiid doesn't play, he can play 30 minutes and put up some pretty good numbers, more so than Dwight Howard at this stage in his career. But yeah, Isaiah Joe. The fans like Paul Reed, B-ball Paul, but I don't think he's quite ready for a regular role yet. He's 12th or 13th man. He's kind of on the fringe there. So yeah, it just kind of depends. How many does Rivers play? 10 guys, 11 guys? Does his rotation change? Is he going to play the same starters all the time? My guess is Milton starts at point guard because he's a little bigger, even though he's really not a point guard. Neither is Maxey. I think Maxey is better and more comfortable coming off the bench with that second unit where he really attacks. And I think that's the best move at this point. And Maxey's 6'2". If you start Maxey and Curry, who's 6'1", you have one of the smallest backcourts in the league. Defensively, that's some real tough matchups.
All right. Well, Tom, as we finish things up here, a storyline around the NBA that you're looking forward to following this year, other than, of course, what's going on at home and what you're covering a lot with the Sixers. Is there anything across the landscape that you're looking forward to follow?
Well, there's always player movement. The Lakers, the whole thing with, they have, Carmelo Anthony now and
the old, the 2012 NBA All-Star team.
Pretty much, yeah. Russell Westbrook. I mean, I think they're going to be really good, but Russell Westbrook is not a shooter, is not an outside shooter. And really, LeBron's not a great shooter either. I think they'd have been better served with like a 3-point shooter. I mean, Westbrook's a great player, don't get me wrong, but I just think the people that think they're going to win automatically, I just don't know. I mean, I think they're certainly going to be in the mix, but I think they may be a tad overrated, in the West. I mean, LeBron's always, other than the year they didn't make the playoffs with the injuries a couple of years ago, his teams are always in the mix, and usually go to the finals. But I think they might be a little bit overrated. But where do some of these guys that go to different places impact? What young guys? Who emerges? Guys that have played well, take that big step from year 2 to year 3, around the league, go from being a really good player to like a superstar, kind of thing, like Trae Young did last year. That type of guy.
Well, Tom Moore, really appreciate you coming on. Been a friend of mine, like I said. Very thankful for you joining the show, friend of the podcast. You can follow Tom on Twitter at Tom Moore, Philly sports columnist for the Bucks County Courier Times, the Intelligencer, and USA Today. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it, my friend. Best of luck this season, and looking forward to following up when things shake out with Ben Simmons and the Sixers.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Colin and Justin. Great talking to you.